During the board meeting, my husband announced that I was fired, then asked if I had any internal shares to transfer. I said not many, just 51%. The entire room fell silent. That morning, I was in the company's lab, wearing a lab coat and safety goggles, hunched over an oscilloscope, tweaking the final parameters for the sensor array of our new industrial image recognition system. For months, I had lived with the hum of ventilation fans, the smell of hot plastic, and the eye-straining glare of white fluorescent lights. I was used to it. What I wasn't used to was the strange feeling when my assistant, a young woman named Maya, pushed the door open, her face as pale as if she'd just heard of a death in the family. Maya handed me a sealed manila envelope marked confidential, her hand trembling. I took off my goggles, my eyes scanning the top line, and my heart stopped as if someone had squeezed it hard. Notice of an emergency board of directors meeting. I flipped to the first item on the agenda, a motion for the dismissal of a senior executive. My voice tried to remain calm, but my throat was bone dry as I asked, "Who proposed this?" Maya swallowed hard, looking down at the floor before daring to speak in a whisper. "Liam," she said. "Liam, my husband. The man who had been with me through 6 years of marriage, 4 of them standing in this company as a symbol of the perfect pairing of tech and business. The press still called us the power couple, one holding the technology, the other the market. I would always just smile, because deep down I knew this company was built on my sweat, and the sweat of those who once ate ramen noodles with me in a garage as cramped as a shoebox. I looked at Maya. She had worked with me for 4 years and wasn't the type to gossip, yet her eyes were filled with a worry that suggested there was more to say. I told her to just say what was on her mind. Maya bit her lip. "There are rumors in the company that this meeting is targeting you." I nodded, not surprised. A well-staged play often begins with silence. I didn't ask any more questions. I just sat down, my back against the cold steel chair, and pulled out my phone, scrolling to my conversation with Liam. The last message was from 4 days ago. He said he was traveling for business to meet with partners about a new round of funding. He told me not to wait up for dinner. He didn't come home that night, but the next morning, when I went down to the parking garage, I saw his black sedan parked silently in its usual spot. The hood was still warm. It meant he had come back, but hadn't come into the house, or he'd returned while I was asleep, or he'd had a night he didn't want to explain. I switched to a password-protected photo album. Inside was a short video and a few pictures sent to me 2 weeks ago by a private investigator I had hired. I never thought my life would come to a day where I'd hire someone to follow my own husband. But when a woman starts seeing pieces that don't fit, she either ignores them to live in peace or faces them to live in truth. The video was shot in front of a luxury hotel. It was late. Liam stood under the lights, his arm around a young woman's shoulder. It was Victoria, our company's director of marketing, young, beautiful, a smooth talker, always knowing how to appear in the right place at the right time. Liam opened the car door for Victoria, looking at her with the same eyes he once used to look at me. It wasn't the look of a boss to an employee. It was more intimate, softer, and far more brutal. I turned off the screen. Not because I was afraid, but because I had seen enough. I didn't want to watch anymore and turn myself into a woman who carves into her own heart just to be sure. Do you believe me when I say this? Sometimes people betray you not because you are flawed, but because their greed is greater than their gratitude. 12 years ago, I started this company from scratch with a few friends. Back then, all I had was an old workbench, a couple of used computers, and a naive belief that I could make it. For the first 3 years, the company's bank account was almost always empty. We lived on credit cards, on loans taken with gritted teeth. Then, in the 4th year, we landed our first major client. From there, the company grew. By the time investors came in, the company was valued at over $300 million, with more than 500 employees and annual revenues exceeding $50 million. People looked at that and said I was lucky. I didn't argue. Luck was part of it, but no one saw the sweat and tears. I met Liam at an industry conference. He was on stage, talking about branding, about markets, about how a tech company needed to learn to step into the spotlight. He spoke beautifully. I, a tech person by nature, rarely trusted polished words, but I had to admit he had a gift. I invited him to join the company and put him in charge of our commercial division. 6 months later, he was promoted to COO. A year after that, we were married. At our wedding, Liam held my hand and said in front of all our friends and family, "Kate is the most brilliant person I have ever met. I will protect her and this company with my life." I believed him then. I believed him because I wanted to believe. The night before the board meeting, Liam came home close to midnight. He slipped off his shoes, tossed his briefcase aside, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and stood looking out the window as if I didn't exist. I was on the sofa, a movie playing on the TV, but my eyes saw nothing. I asked, "What's the meeting about tomorrow?" Liam didn't turn around. "Business strategy." I pressed on, "Do I need to prepare any technical documents?" His reply was short, "No need. Just come as you normally would." After that, he went upstairs and into the bathroom. The sound of running water felt like a deliberate attempt to drown out everything else. I got up and walked over to where he had left his briefcase. I'm not proud of going through my husband's things, but that night, if I hadn't opened it, I probably would have remained a fool for much longer. Inside were his laptop, phone, and a notebook. I flipped to the most recent page. There were a few quick lines outlining the order of votes. Who would speak first? Who would add unfavorable data about costs? Who was tasked with persuasion? At the bottom, a line was crossed out but still legible. Kate only has a few shares, not a concern. I closed the notebook, let out a breath, and gave a faint, bitter smile. I went into my home office, opened the safe with my fingerprint and a code, and took out 2 file folders, one black, one brown. The black folder contained the documents detailing the true shareholding structure, things not visible on the official registration papers. The brown folder held things that were enough to decide the fates of several people. I put both folders into my briefcase and locked it. I didn't cry that night. Not because I wasn't in pain, but because I was past the age of crying to make someone else feel pity. The next morning, Liam woke up before me. He was wearing a dark gray suit, his hair neatly combed. Standing in front of the mirror adjusting his cufflinks, an outsider would think he was preparing to sign a major deal, not preparing to bury his wife alive in a boardroom. I was drinking a glass of milk and asked casually, "Big day today?" He turned to look at me. There was something complex in his eyes, something like regret, like pity, or maybe like goodbye. Liam said, "Yes, just be your usual self." Before heading to the office, I stopped at a flower shop. It was our wedding anniversary. I don't know why I still stopped. Perhaps a part of me still wanted to fool myself that things hadn't gotten this bad. I bought a bouquet of pale pink roses. The owner smiled. "Buying them for your husband again? You two are so sweet." I just smiled without replying. Some things you can't explain to someone who doesn't live inside your home. At the company, I placed the bouquet in a corner of my office, then took my briefcase and went straight to the executive floor. The boardroom door was closed. Through the glass, I saw Liam sitting in the chairman's seat, the seat that was usually mine. Next to him was Victoria. They sat so close that anyone looking in would think they were a couple about to share a victory. I pushed the door open. All eyes turned to me. No one greeted me. No one asked a question. There was only scrutiny, pity, and a hint of gloating. I said softly, "Good morning, everyone." Liam looked at me, his voice as cold as if he were reading an announcement. "I'm chairing today's meeting. You can sit at the end." I looked down and saw my chair had been moved to the far corner, next to a large potted plant. It was an arrangement subtle enough to say, "You are no longer the center of attention." I didn't argue. I walked to the end of the table, sat down, and placed my briefcase on the table. My fingers tapped lightly on its leather surface, each tap as steady as a heartbeat. Inside, I felt strangely calm, not agitated, not broken. It was a terrifying stillness. Right on time, Henry, one of the other co-founders, walked in. Henry noticed my seating arrangement and frowned, but before he could say anything, Liam stood up and clicked the remote. The screen lit up with large text, "Motion for the dismissal of the Chief Technology Officer." Liam began to speak. He talked about vision, about opportunities, about stagnation, about the need for change to grow. He used the same persuasive tone that had once made me believe in him. Only today, that tone was turned against me, meant to push me down. Victoria stood up to present the numbers. She spoke of rising costs, falling profits, of excessive investment in technology, and how the market needed a more pragmatic approach. The two investors, Mr. Stevens and Mr. Miller, nodded along, adding their own comments. The head of operations, a man named Harris, sat with his head down, so silent he seemed afraid to even breathe. Liam turned to me. "Kate, do you have anything to say in your defense?" I looked straight at him and asked calmly, "If I speak, will any of you listen?" The room was silent, and in that silence, I understood they had already made up their minds. Liam sighed, playing the part of the benevolent executioner. "Let's vote. All in favor of dismissing Kate, please raise your hand." One hand went up, then two, then 3, 4, 5. 5 votes. The other 3, including Henry, did not raise their hands. Liam nodded and announced, "According to the principle of majority rule, the motion passes. From this moment on, Kate is no longer fit to hold the position of Chief Technology Officer. Kate, please cooperate with the handover." I gave a slight nod. "Fine." Victoria smirked. "You don't feel wronged?" I looked at Victoria for a second. "What's the point of feeling wronged when they've already decided you lose?" Liam shifted to a tone of feigned compassion. "After all, you are a co-founder. The company will provide a severance package. Oh, and do you have any internal shares you need to transfer? If you want to sell them, the company can buy them back at a reasonable price." Victoria immediately chimed in, her voice sweet as honey. "That's right. Now that you're no longer in management, holding on to shares will just be a headache. Sell them and lighten your load." When you hear this, you must understand my pain wasn't about losing my job. It was in that question. They didn't just want to push me out of my position. They wanted me out of my ownership. They wanted me to stand on the outside and watch the company I built be held in someone else's hands. Henry slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet, shouting, "Have you people no shame?" But Liam just shrugged, speaking like a worldly sage. "The company must move forward. Everyone has to make sacrifices." I slowly opened my briefcase, took out the black file folder, and placed it on the table. I stood up and walked to the middle of the room. All eyes were fixed on that folder, as if it were a dark pit. My voice was very soft, but each word landed as clearly as a hammer's blow. "As for shares, I don't have many." Liam looked at me, a flicker of anticipation in his eyes, as if he thought I was about to beg or negotiate. I looked straight at him and continued, "Just 51%. The entire room fell dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the faint hum of the air conditioning vents in the ceiling, hear someone swallow a hard lump in their throat. I remained standing in the middle of the room, my hand resting on the black folder, looking directly at Liam. Just one phrase, 51%, and I watched the color drain from his face as if he'd been slapped in public. The confident posture he held in the chairman's seat moments ago, the half-smirk of a man certain of victory, suddenly shattered and fell to the floor like a broken mask. Beside him, Victoria's hand, holding a pen, froze. The pen dropped, clattering on the table. The sound wasn't loud, but in the profound silence, it was jarring. She bent to pick it up, her hand shaking, and when she looked up at me, the triumphant look in her eyes was gone, replaced by panic. The kind of panic you feel when you step into a dark room thinking there's an exit, only to find a cliff's edge. Mr. Stevens and Mr. Miller looked at each other. I could see it clearly. These were men accustomed to money, to negotiations, to turning the tables, yet their eyes were completely lost. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of the number. In their world, numbers were blades, and 51 was a blade held right at the throat. Liam's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but his voice was caught. Finally, he forced out a question that sounded dry, like he was reading the wrong line from a script. "What did you say?" I didn't smile or mock him. I just answered calmly. I said, "I hold 51%, which means I am the one who makes the final decision." Liam stared at me for a long time. His eyes were a storm of suspicion, fear, anger, and something that resembled a plea. But that plea wasn't for our marriage. It was a plea for power. When people get used to being on top, the moment they're pulled down, their pain isn't for losing a person. It's for losing the throne. Victoria let out a forced laugh. Kate, are you joking? The official registration shows you only have 5%. I tilted my head and looked at Victoria. You're mistaken. On the public registration, I am only listed with 5%. The rest is held in other people's names. Mr. Stevens frowned. You mean nominee shareholders? I nodded slightly. Correct. Held in trust by Henry and a few other founding members, but the proxy agreements and certificates of ownership are all right here. With that, I unzipped the black folder. The papers were neatly clipped, bearing official seals, signatures, and notarizations. I laid them out on the table, stack by stack, like laying bricks to rebuild the wall they had just torn down. When they saw Henry's name on the documents, Mr. Stevens and Mr. Miller grew even paler. They turned to Henry as if to ask if he knew. Henry didn't answer them. He just looked at me, his eyes a mix of sympathy and respect, the look of an old veteran seeing his comrade had prepared an escape route long before the battle began. Liam shot to his feet, the chair scraping loudly behind him. He leaned on the table, trying to keep his voice steady. Kate, what is the meaning of this? Why did you hide this from me? I heard that question and my heart turned to ice. Hide it from you? He asked, as if I were the one at fault. I looked at him, my voice still even. You ask why I hid it from you? Then you answer me first. What have you and Victoria been hiding from me? Victoria flinched. Liam, as if struck in a sore spot, tensed up. What are you talking about? I didn't pull out my phone, didn't present the evidence right away. I just spoke slowly, letting each word drop onto the table. I've known for a long time. That phrase, for a long time, made Liam stumble. He turned to Victoria as if seeking an ally, but she was no longer composed enough to be one. She looked down, her lips pressed tight, her eyes turning red more from fear than from shame. Mr. Miller cleared his throat, trying to pull the meeting back to procedure. If you truly hold 51%, then the result of the previous vote may have to be reconsidered. I looked at Mr. Miller. Not may have to be. It is null and void. The company's bylaws clearly state that the majority shareholder has the right to veto any decision concerning senior personnel and strategic direction. You all just voted, but I never agreed. Mr. Stevens turned sharply to Liam, his voice cutting. Liam, you told us she was a minor shareholder. You showed us the documents. You guaranteed the ownership structure was transparent. Explain yourself. Liam stammered. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. That phrase, I didn't know, made me laugh silently. I suddenly thought how people can live together for 6 years, sleep under the same roof, eat at the same table, and still know nothing about the person next to them. Or perhaps they didn't want to know. They only wanted to believe what was convenient for them. Victoria suddenly looked up, her voice rising in panic. You did this on purpose. You set a trap for us. I turned to her. I didn't set a trap. I just didn't offer my hands for you to tie. Henry finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Let me be blunt. Kate prepared for this from day one. She kept control to prevent exactly this kind of situation. You have no one to blame but yourselves. Liam turned on Henry, his eyes red. Henry, you knew about this too? Henry looked him straight in the eye. I knew. And I agreed to sign the proxy, because I knew Kate wasn't one to trust easily. As for you, you should ask yourself why she had to do it in the first place. Liam was silent. I could see the muscles in his jaw working. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. At that moment, a part of me ached, not because I missed him, but because I missed the time when I was naive enough to believe a husband was a pillar of support. It turns out, a pillar of support can also be a lever to push you down. I zipped the black folder closed, not letting them touch it, as if it were my salvation. I spoke clearly. As of now, I am chairing this meeting. No one in the room reacted immediately. Perhaps they hadn't adjusted to the sudden shift in power. I looked at Liam, then at Victoria. First, the motion to dismiss me is rescinded. Second, I am calling for a new session of this meeting with a new agenda. To review the executive performance of CEO Liam and Marketing Director Victoria. Victoria jumped up. Kate, you can't. I cut her off. I can, and I will. Liam took a step back, his voice hoarse. Kate, don't take this too far. Whatever issues we have, let's talk about them at home. The phrase, husband and wife, spoken so late, sounded like someone hastily throwing on a torn old coat to cover their shame. I looked at him, my heart strangely calm. Don't use those two words as a shield. When you sat in the chairman's seat and announced my dismissal, did you think of us as husband and wife then? Liam didn't answer. He just stood there, his eyes glistening. I don't trust tears. I only trust the truth. I turned to Mr. Stevens and Mr. Miller. You two are investors. I don't want to make this a bigger issue for you if you were genuinely misled. But from now on, all decisions regarding this company will go through me directly. Mr. Stevens nodded quickly, like a man who had just escaped death. Mr. Miller also nodded, his tone much softer. We understand. We will cooperate. I looked at Harris, the head of operations, who had been staring at the table the entire time. Harris? He flinched and shot to his feet, his voice trembling. Yes, Kate. I spoke slowly. Sit down. And remember one thing. Don't sell your conscience for a moment of peace. Today, I'm giving you a chance, but chances don't come around forever. Harris burst into tears, nodding repeatedly. His tears didn't move me. They only made me see that in this world, people sometimes betray others not because they are evil, but because they are weak. And weakness can become a form of evil. I turned to look at Liam one last time during that meeting. Liam, this meeting is adjourned for now. Go back to your office and wait for further notice. And do not touch any company documents. From this moment on, everything is under supervision. Liam looked at me, his lips trembling. Kate, I didn't reply. I just picked up my briefcase and walked out of the boardroom. When the door closed behind me, I finally felt how cold my hands were. I leaned against the wall in the hallway for a second. Not because I was afraid of them, but because I suddenly realized that I had won this battle. But my heart had also been carved out. A victory like that doesn't come with applause. It only comes with a long, deep sigh. I stepped into the elevator. The polished steel walls reflected my face, calm, but my eyes were burning. I didn't let the tears fall. I just told myself, Catherine, you can stand up from these ruins, as long as you hold on to your humanity. The elevator took me down to the parking garage in a silence as heavy as stone. When the doors opened, the smell of gasoline and the cold of the concrete hit my face, and I finally felt like I was back in my own body. After a meeting where every sentence felt like a scalpel slicing into my life, I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine, my hands resting on the cold steering wheel. I thought about the bouquet of pale pink roses wilting in the corner of my office. I thought about Liam's words, "Let's talk at home." I thought about Victoria's face when I announced the new meeting. And I thought about the brown folder in my safe, the one no one knew about yet. I drove home. The familiar route suddenly felt longer than usual. I stopped at red lights, I went at green lights, everything operated as it should. Only my heart had changed. The feeling of betrayal doesn't explode like a bomb. It smolders, slowly drawing the warmth from your chest, leaving behind a cold, empty space. When I got home, I saw Liam's car was already in the driveway. He had gotten here before me. I turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and walked inside. The living room lights were on. Liam was sitting on the sofa, his back slumped, his hands clasped together. When he saw me, he shot to his feet like a child waiting for his mother to come home. "Kate, you're back!" I set my briefcase on the table without looking at him. "Yes." Liam walked closer, his voice low. "Can we talk?" I sat in the chair opposite him. "Go ahead." He stood there for a second, then perched on the edge of the sofa, his head down. I never expected things to turn out like this. I let out a small laugh. "You didn't expect it? Or you didn't want to expect it?" Liam looked up, his eyes red. "Kate, I was wrong. I know I was wrong, but it's not what you think with Victoria." I looked him straight in the eye. "It's not what I think, or it's exactly what I saw?" Liam was speechless. I took out my phone, opened the video from the password-protected folder, and placed it on the coffee table. I didn't turn on the sound. The images were enough. When Liam saw himself with his arm around Victoria in front of the hotel, all the blood drained from his face. You had me followed." I shook my head. "I just hired someone to do the work I didn't have the courage to do myself." Liam covered his face with his trembling hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I heard those words, but my heart was empty. Was he sorry because he got caught, or sorry because he betrayed me? Liam was silent. That silence was the clearest answer. I stood up, went to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. After taking a sip, my throat felt less dry. "Liam, I'm not going to have a screaming match. I'm not going to throw a tantrum, and I'm not going to cry. It's not because I'm stronger than anyone else. It's because the moment you started planning to push me out of my own company, a part of me died." Liam broke down, sobbing. The sound of a man's cry was heavy, raw. "Kate, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted the company to go in a direction I thought was best." I turned back to look at him. "You wanted power. You wanted to be above me. You wanted me to step back while you moved forward. And Victoria was the prize." Liam shook his head repeatedly. "It's not like that." I didn't argue anymore. I was tired. My phone vibrated. The screen showed Mom. I frowned. My mother rarely called at this hour. "Mom, I'm here." Her voice on the other end was trembling. "Kate, your mother-in-law just called me. She said you humiliated your husband in front of everyone, that you're trying to kick him out of the company. Is that true, honey?" I closed my eyes. "Yes, Mom, it's true." My mother sighed. "Sweetheart, shouldn't married couples settle things behind closed doors? Why did you have to make such a big scene?" I smiled sadly. "Mom, if I hadn't made a scene, I would have been the one kicked out of my own company today." My mother was quiet for a moment, then her voice softened. "So there's something else going on with him, isn't there?" I didn't answer directly. "Let me handle this, Mom. Don't worry." I hung up and turned back to the living room. Liam was still sitting there, his eyes red, his face pale. I said, "Your mother just called my mother." Liam flinched. "My mom, she did that?" I nodded. "You see, in your mother's eyes, I'm still the daughter-in-law who has to be patient, who has to step back, who has to protect her son's reputation. And you will always be her poor, innocent son." Liam lowered his head. "My mom doesn't know the whole story," I replied coldly. "She knows enough to blame me. That's all that matters." The doorbell rang. I looked at the clock. Almost 10 p.m. I went to open it. My mother-in-law stood there, her hair in a tight bun, her expression stern. My father-in-law stood behind her, his back more stooped than I remembered. "Please come in," I said. She walked in but didn't sit down, staring at me. "What is this stunt you pulled at the company, Catherine? Do you have any idea how much you humiliated your husband?" I stood facing her. I was just protecting what's mine. She pointed a finger at Liam. "He is your husband. A husband and wife are supposed to be a team. You aired your dirty laundry in public. Do you have any respect for this family?" I took a deep breath. "When he was having an affair, did you ask him if he had any respect for this family?" She froze. My father-in-law let out a soft gasp. Liam shot to his feet. "Kate, don't say that." I looked directly at his mother. "I have proof. I'm not lying." She looked at Liam. "Is it true, son?" Liam hung his head, silent. That gesture made her shoulders slump, but only a second later she turned back to me, her voice sharp again. "Even if he was wrong, you had no right to do that. You're the wife. You're supposed to know how to keep your husband." I laughed, but tears streamed down my face. If I couldn't keep my husband, it's because he didn't want to be kept, not because I didn't know how to forgive. My father-in-law spoke up, his voice low and firm. "That's enough. You be quiet. He was in the wrong." She whirled on him. "You always take her side." He sighed. "I'm taking the side of what's right." I looked at them both, exhausted. I don't want to argue, but let me be clear. I am not firing Liam from the company. I am only calling for a review of his executive responsibilities. As for our marriage, I haven't decided yet. My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes no longer fierce but cold. "What do you plan to do next?" I replied. "I plan to live for myself." She shook her head and turned to Liam. "Look at your wife. She's changed." I said softly, "I haven't changed. I'm just not a fool anymore." My father-in-law took his wife's arm. "Let's go home. Let them sort this out themselves." When the door closed, it was just me and Liam in the living room. He stood there, looking like he'd aged 10 years in an afternoon. "Kate, are you going to divorce me?" I looked at him for a long time. "Tell me, if I didn't have that 51% today, what would I have left?" Liam didn't answer. I turned and went upstairs. In my office, I opened the safe and took out the brown folder. Inside was the personal services contract between Liam and Victoria, records of wire transfers, and their private agreement that he would transfer executive control to her after pushing me out. I sat down and looked at the papers. I knew this battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office, the brown folder open before me. The desk lamp cast a harsh light on the black and white text, the red seals, each line like a fresh cut on an old wound. I reread every email between Liam and Victoria, every payment he'd sent her under the guise of project bonuses, every text message about their plan to gently ease Kate out. One message read, "Just make sure you keep the chairman seat. I'll handle the rest." Liam had replied, "Don't worry. She's just a tech nerd. Without the market, she's nothing." I smiled, a silent, humorless twitch of my lips. So 6 years of my marriage, in his eyes, could be summed up in 2 words. Just a. Around 3 a.m., I heard the bedroom door open. Liam was standing in the hallway, his hand on the doorframe, looking in. He didn't enter, just stood there for a long time. "Kate, you're still awake?" I didn't look up. "Yes." He shifted uncomfortably. I can't sleep." I still didn't look at him. "Neither can I." Liam took one more step into the room, stopping behind my chair. "I know what you're thinking. I know you hate me." I shook my head slightly. "I don't hate you. I just don't trust you anymore." That sentence made him collapse into the chair opposite me. I heard his heavy sigh, like a man who had just fallen off a cliff. "Kate, if I end everything with Victoria, if I resign, if I start over from scratch, would you give me a chance?" I swiveled my chair to face him. "You asked me that question. Do you really think I still need a man like you?" Liam's eyes reddened. "I'm your husband," I smiled sadly. "You were." He froze. I turned back to my desk, closed the brown folder, slid it into a drawer, and locked it. "Go back to bed. I have a meeting tomorrow." Liam stood up and walked out. Before closing the door, he turned back. "Kate, I'm sorry." I didn't reply. The door clicked shut. For the first time in 6 years, I felt how big and cold this house was. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I sent out an email convening an extraordinary board meeting for that afternoon. The agenda: a review of the executive conduct of CEO Liam and Marketing Director Victoria. I attached an excerpt from the company bylaws regarding the rights of the majority shareholder. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Liam. "Kate, are you really doing this?" "Yes." "You're going to drag my name through the mud in front of everyone?" "You did that to me yesterday." Liam was silent. I hung up. Victoria called immediately after. Her voice was trembling, stripped of its usual arrogance. "Kate, can we meet and talk privately?" I replied, "No need. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in the meeting." She choked out, "Don't push things too far." I said coldly, "You should have said that to the person who started this." By noon, my former mother-in-law called again. This time her voice was lower, but still heavy with accusation. "Catherine, are you really trying to ruin Liam's life?" I sighed. "I'm just following the law." "What kind of law puts a husband on trial in front of the world?" I replied, "The company's law, and the law of my heart." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "He's still going to be the father of your children someday." I gave a bitter laugh. He never thought about a future with me when he was planning to kick me out of my own company. She hung up without another word. That afternoon, the boardroom was more crowded than the day before. In addition to the usual members, our corporate lawyer and an internal auditor were present. Liam sat on one side, Victoria one seat away from him. They didn't look at each other. I walked in and took the chairman's seat. No one objected. Let's begin. I had the lawyer present the case on conflicts of interest, misappropriation of company funds, and the secret agreements between Liam and Victoria that I had uncovered. The internal auditor opened a slideshow. Transaction after transaction appeared on the screen, email after email, text after text. Victoria started crying in the middle of the meeting. I just loved him. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I looked at her. You didn't think, but you did it. Liam jumped to his feet. It was all my fault. I'll take full responsibility. I looked at him. And what will you take responsibility with? He was speechless. Mr. Stevens sighed. Liam, you've disappointed us all. Mr. Miller added. If it weren't for Kate, this company would be in both of your hands by now. I tapped the table lightly. I propose we vote on 3 motions. 1. The suspension of Liam from his position as CEO. 2. The termination of Victoria's employment contract. 3. Forwarding the file on financial misconduct to our legal department for review. Victoria screamed, You can't do this! You're trying to destroy my life! I looked at her. You destroyed your own life the moment you walked into that hotel with another woman's husband. The vote was swift. 8 out of 10 in favor of all 3 motions. Liam sank into his chair. Victoria buried her face in her hands. The meeting ended. Everyone filed out in a heavy silence. Liam waited for me in the hallway. Kate, do you really want to push me into a corner? I looked at him, no longer angry, just tired. Liam, you walked yourself into this corner. That evening, I came home to find Liam had packed his things. A small suitcase stood by the door. I'm going to my parents for a few days, he said. I nodded. Okay. He looked at me for a long time. Have you filed for divorce yet? Not yet, I replied. But I will. He lowered his head. I won't hold you back anymore. I watched him pull the suitcase out the door. It closed behind him. This time, I felt no pain, just emptiness, but it was an emptiness that made room for something new. I went back to my office, opened the drawer, and took out the brown folder again. I knew this wasn't over. The legal battle was the final chapter. 3 days later, I signed the divorce papers. There were no tears, no dramatic scenes, just a drizzly morning. I sat in my lawyer's office, held a pen, and signed my name on a piece of paper, ending 6 years of marriage. The lawyer asked, Are you sure? I nodded. I'm sure. The moment the pen left the paper, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Not because the pain was gone, but because I no longer had to lie to myself. That afternoon, Liam called. Kate, I received the notice from the court. Yes. Are you really not giving me any chance at all? I looked out the window. The rain was still falling. You had plenty of chances. You used them all up. Liam was silent. I could hear his heavy sigh over the phone. I won't fight you for assets. I won't ask for shares. I'm just asking you not to take the company matter to the authorities. I closed my eyes. Liam, what you did is no longer a marital issue. It's a matter of accountability. Kate, if you do this, I'll have nothing left. I replied very softly. You didn't think about that when you were signing those contracts. I hung up, my hand trembling slightly. Not out of pity for him, but because I realized the love I had for him was completely gone. When love dies, there is no more softness. The next day, my former mother-in-law came to see me, unannounced. She stood at my doorstep, looking much smaller than she had a few days ago. May I come in, Catherine? I opened the door. Please. She sat on the sofa, her eyes red as she looked around the house. I helped you two buy this house. I nodded. I know. I'll pay you back. She shook her head. I don't want the money. I just want you to not be so harsh. I sat opposite her. I'm not being harsh. I'm being just. She took my hand. It was the first time in years she had held my hand not to scold me, but to plead. Kate, he was wrong. He deserves to be punished. But don't send him to prison. I pulled my hand away. I'm not sending him anywhere. I'm just not covering for him. She burst into tears. You're too cruel. My heart tightened. But I still said, if I didn't have 51% that day, where would I be right now? She fell silent. Then she stood up, her back completely stooped. I'm begging you, just this once. I looked at her. my voice softer. "I feel for you, but I cannot sacrifice my principles to protect your son's reputation." She turned to leave. Before walking out the door, she said, "You will be alone." I replied, "I'd rather be alone than live with betrayal." That evening, my former father-in-law called. "Kate?" "Yes." His voice was low, tired. "I'm sorry, my child. I failed to raise him right." I choked up. "Don't say that. You did the right thing. I don't blame you." I was silent, tears falling. It was the first time I cried for my husband's family, not out of pity for Liam, but because I knew that in that family there was still one person who understood me. A week later, the legal department officially submitted the file on Liam's financial misconduct to the authorities. The news spread quickly through the business community. Former CEO under investigation. Marketing director arrested for embezzlement. My name appeared in the articles as the whistleblower. Liam called again. "Kate, you won. Are you satisfied now?" I sighed. "Liam, I don't feel like I've won. I just feel like it's over. Do you really want to see me in prison?" I replied, "I want to see you take responsibility." He laughed. A dry, hollow sound. "You really are ruthless." I didn't argue. Perhaps in his eyes I was ruthless, but in my own eyes I was just a woman who refused to suffer in silence any longer. 2 days later, Victoria was taken into custody. The last text she sent me was, "Are you happy now?" I didn't reply. I had no interest in her defeat. The divorce hearing was quick. Liam didn't contest anything. The judge declared the marriage dissolved. I kept the house. He received a cash settlement as agreed. When we walked out of the courtroom, Liam was waiting for me in the hall. "Kate, are we really over?" I looked at him, the man I once loved more than myself. "It's over. I still love you." I shook my head. "You love power more." He said nothing else, just stood and watched me walk away. That night, I sat alone in my house and opened a bottle of wine. I didn't get drunk. I just wanted a small ritual for myself, to bury this marriage. My phone rang. It was my mom. "Are you okay, honey?" "I'm okay. Come stay with me for a few days. I'll make you soup." I smiled. "I'll come tomorrow." After hanging up, I sat in silence. I thought about the future, about the company, about the days ahead without Liam. I wasn't scared. I just felt empty. But that emptiness was no longer frightening. 1 month later, Liam was indicted. Victoria was formally charged. I stood in my office, looking out at the city, the sun glaring through the glass. Henry walked in. "Kate, you okay?" I nodded. "I'm okay. You did the right thing." I smiled. "I know." I turned back to my desk, opened my laptop, and started working on a new project. There was no trace of Liam in it. I knew my life had turned a new page. 3 months after the divorce, my life settled into a strange state, not tumultuous, not tragic, but not the peaceful existence one might imagine either. It was like a lake after a storm, the water settled, but with quiet undercurrents still swirling beneath. I went to stay with my parents in the suburbs for a few weeks, just as I'd promised. Every morning, my mom would wake up early to cook soup, fry fish, and urge me to eat another bowl of rice. She didn't ask many questions, just looked at me sometimes and sighed. "You've lost weight," I'd smile. "Lighter body, lighter spirit, Mom." She'd shake her head. "A lighter body doesn't always mean a lighter heart." I wouldn't reply. My mother understood me better than I thought. But some things, when spoken, only cause more pain. During the day, I went to work. In the evenings, I had dinner with my parents. The house was quiet, free of the arguments and heavy silences that had marked my time with Liam. But there was also no one waiting up for me, no one asking if I'd eaten. I thought I would feel emptier, but it turned out this emptiness was easier to breathe in than the suffocation of before. At the company, I officially took back the role of CTO, while also serving as interim CEO. Henry became the deputy. The decisions I made were swift, rational, and devoid of personal sentiment. Nearly half of the senior management was replaced. I let go of those who had clearly sided with Liam not for revenge, but because I no longer needed people who could turn their backs at any moment. One afternoon, during a meeting with the engineering team, my secretary knocked. "Kate, Your former father-in-law is here to see you." I paused for a second. "Show him in." He walked in, looking thinner than before, his back more stooped. I stood up. "Please, have a seat." He looked around my office, his gaze quiet. "You're still here, still working." I nodded. "Yes." He sighed. "That boy, I'm so sorry, Kate." I sat down opposite him. "Please don't say that. It's over now." He looked at me, his eyes red. "His mother, she's still angry with you." I smiled sadly. "I understand." He lowered his head. "He's been detained. His trial is next week." I was silent. Even though I had prepared for it, hearing the words still made my heart ache. "I didn't come here to blame you," he said. "I came to thank you." I looked up. "Thank me?" "Thank you, Kate. If you hadn't done what you did, this company would have collapsed. This whole family would have collapsed. He has to pay the price for his actions." I swallowed hard. He stood up and bowed deeply. I shot up in alarm to stop him. "Please, don't do that. I owe you an apology," he said, "for not defending you when his mother blamed you." I was speechless. He turned and walked to the door. Before closing it, he said, "Even if you are no longer my daughter-in-law, I will always see you as my daughter." The door closed. I sank back into my chair, my hands trembling. For the first time since the divorce, I cried. Not for Liam, but because I realized that while some things are lost, others remain. 2 weeks later, I received a summons to appear in court as a material witness in Liam's case. My former mother-in-law called that same night. "Catherine, when you go to court, can you speak gently on his behalf?" Her voice was hoarse. I sighed. "I won't invent anything, but I won't hide anything either. Do you hate him that much?" I replied very slowly. "I don't hate him. I just don't want to live another day of my life based on lies." She was silent, then whispered, "He's about to lose everything." I closed my eyes. He lost everything the moment he betrayed me. On the day of the trial, I wore a simple black dress, no makeup, no elaborate hairstyle. I didn't want to appear as a victor. I was just a woman there to close a chapter. Liam was led into the courtroom in a blue jumpsuit, his hands cuffed. When he saw me, he paused, his eyes red. "Kate." I gave a slight nod, saying nothing. During the proceedings, the prosecutor read out each charge. I was called to the stand. I testified to exactly what had happened, no more, no less. Liam watched me the entire time, his gaze no longer filled with resentment, only despair. The court sentenced Liam to 3 years in prison, Victoria to 2. My former mother-in-law broke down crying in the courtroom. I stood up and walked out. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. I knew that in her eyes, I would always be the one who sent her son to jail. In the hallway, Liam was being escorted past me. "Kate," he called out, his voice shaking. I turned. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know it's too late for anything." I looked at him for a long time. "Liam, I don't forgive you, but I don't hate you anymore either." He gave a pained smile. "Live well." I nodded. "You too, if you get the chance." He was led away. I stood there, my heart empty. Not painful, not light, just empty. A month later, my former mother-in-law came to see me. She had lost a lot of weight and none of her former sharpness remained. "Can I come in?" I opened the door. "Please." She sat down, looking around the new apartment I had just bought. "Are you living well?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I'm sorry." I froze. "For blaming you?" she said. "For trying to force you to endure it." I was speechless. She took my hand. This time, there was no tension. "I have nothing left to hold on to for him. I just hope you don't resent me." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I don't resent you." She stood up, her back trembling. "Live a good life. Don't close your heart because of one man." I nodded. That night, I sat alone, looking out at my balcony. The city lights twinkled in the wind. I understood that my life had truly turned a new page. No Liam, no marriage, but there was me. After that visit from my former mother-in-law, my heart softened a little, as if someone had gently untied a knot that had been pulled tight for a long time. I no longer felt like an outcast from a family. I was just a woman who had walked to the end of one road and was now standing at a new crossroads. Work swept me back into its rhythm. I grew accustomed to long meetings, restructuring plans, and late nights alone in my office. Some said I had become cold, others that I was too rational. But only I knew that if I didn't immerse myself in work, I wouldn't know how to face the emptiness inside me. One afternoon, as I was reviewing a partnership contract with a new client, my office door opened. "Kate, you have a visitor." "Who is it?" "Daniel, from the automation equipment partner." I was a bit surprised. I had only met Daniel once, during the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding. My impression of him was a calm man who spoke little, had bright eyes, and was impeccably professional. "Send him in." Daniel entered, bowing his head slightly. "Hello, Kate." "Hello, Daniel. Is there something urgent that you had to come all the way here?" He smiled gently. "Not urgent. But there are a few technical details I wanted to discuss with you in person. Email seemed too cumbersome." I pointed to a chair. "Please, sit." We talked for nearly an hour. Daniel was thorough, asking insightful questions and listening intently without interruption. As he was leaving, he said, "I know you're very busy, but if you're free tonight, I'd like to treat you to dinner, as a thank you for the detailed explanation." I paused. "Daniel, He held up a hand, a kind smile on his face. "Please don't misunderstand. It's just a working dinner, nothing more." I hesitated for a few seconds, then nodded. "Okay." The dinner took place at a small, quiet restaurant. Daniel didn't ask about my personal life. We talked about work, about his failures during his own startup days, about how he once lost an entire project because he trusted the wrong person. "How did you get through that?" I asked. He looked out the window, sat quietly for a moment, then said, "I asked myself what kind of life I wanted to live from then on. In the end, you just have to get back up." I smiled. "Sounds familiar." He looked at me, his eyes more understanding than I expected. "You've been betrayed, too." I nodded. "Yes." He didn't press further, only said, "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I didn't reply, but something stirred within me. In the following days, Daniel would occasionally text me, asking if I'd eaten, if I was getting enough sleep. Nothing pushy, nothing invasive. When I replied with short answers, he never seemed bothered. One evening, my mom called. "Honey, are you coming home for dinner this weekend? Your father misses you." "Yes, Mom." When I got there, my mom studied me more closely than usual. "Are you hiding something from me?" I laughed. "What could I possibly have to hide?" She shook her head. "I gave birth to you. I know when someone has caught your eye. Am I right?" I blushed. "Mom," she smiled warmly. "It's a good thing. Don't live alone forever. You don't owe Liam anything." I was silent, Daniel's face appearing in my mind, but I quickly reminded myself, I'm not ready. Another afternoon, while I was in a meeting, my secretary informed me my former mother-in-law was here. I stepped out. "Is something wrong?" She took my hand. "I need to ask you for a favor." "Of course. What is it?" "Next week is his father's birthday. I want you to come for a family dinner. Not as a daughter-in-law, just as an old friend of the family." I froze. "I'm afraid." She looked at me, her eyes red. "I know it's awkward for you, but his father isn't well. He keeps asking about you." I took a deep breath. "I'll be there." That night, I texted Daniel. "I have a family matter this weekend. I can't meet." He replied, "No problem. Let me know when you're free." The dinner at my former in-law's house was quiet. My former father-in-law held my hand, his own trembling. "Are you well, my child?" "I'm well." He smiled. "It's good to have you here." My former mother-in-law looked at me without saying much, but her gaze was much softer than before. As I was leaving, she handed me a bag, some fruit, and a few of your favorite dishes. "Take them with you." I choked up. "Mom, you'll always be my daughter," she said softly. On the drive home, I cried. Not from pain, but from the realization that some relationships you think are broken can be mended with just a little bit of grace. A few days later, Daniel invited me to a movie. I hesitated, then accepted. In the dark theater, he didn't touch me, just sat beside me, leaving a comfortable space between us. On the way home, he asked, "Does it feel tiring to be with me?" I shook my head. "No, that's good. he smiled. I'm not in a hurry. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid at the thought of someone else entering my life. One night, I dreamt of Liam. He was standing far away, saying nothing, just looking at me before turning and walking away. I woke up, and the pain wasn't as sharp as it used to be. I knew I was slowly letting go. After the movie with Daniel, I stopped avoiding his messages. Not because I was in love, but because I realized I was no longer afraid of a man caring for me in a decent way. Daniel didn't ask too many questions, didn't demand immediate replies, and didn't seem upset when I was silent all day due to work. His calmness was strangely reassuring. One evening, I was having dinner at my mom's. My dad smiled at me. "You're looking healthier these days." My mom served me a piece of braised fish. Having someone to look after you makes all the difference. I blushed. "Mom." She just smiled, but I knew she was happy. She had worried I would shut myself off forever. The next day, I got a call from my former mother-in-law, Kate. His father has been hospitalized. I was stunned. What happened? His heart is weak. The doctors want to monitor him. I didn't think twice. I'm on my way. At the hospital, my former father-in-law looked frail in the bed. When he saw me, he gave a faint smile. "You came." "Yes. How are you feeling?" "Not dead yet," he joked weakly. My former mother-in-law stood beside him, her eyes red. I sat down and took his hand. "You need to rest. We still need you." He looked at me for a long time. "I thought after everything, you wouldn't come back." I shook my head. "You're still my father." He nodded slightly, and I saw his eyes well up. That night, I stayed at the hospital with her. She whispered, "I know you could have avoided all of this, but you still came." I couldn't bear not to. She took my hand. "You have a good heart." I didn't reply. I just thought that if she had been this gentle years ago, maybe things wouldn't have gone so far. But it was useless to think about it now. Daniel texted, "Are you okay?" I replied, "My former father-in-law is in the hospital. I'm staying here tonight. Do you need me to come over?" I hesitated, then texted, "Not right now. I'll let you know if I do." He replied, "Okay, take care of yourself." 3 days later, he was discharged. My former mother-in-law insisted I come over for a celebratory dinner. If you don't come, his father will be sad. So I went. It was just the 3 of us. She cooked all my favorite dishes. "Eat up," she said, serving me food. I looked at her. "Mom." "Yes? I'm sorry for all the times I argued with you." She sighed. "I'm sorry too. I was so blind." We fell silent, but this time the silence wasn't heavy. When I got home, I texted Daniel. My former father-in-law was discharged. He replied, "I'm glad to hear that." I hesitated. "Are you free this weekend?" "Yes. Why?" "I want to cook dinner for you." He replied almost instantly, "I would be honored." The dinner with Daniel took place at my apartment. My cooking was a bit clumsy, but he ate every last bite. "It's delicious," he smiled. I looked at him, my heart softening. For the first time since the divorce, this place felt like a home. After dinner, we stood on the balcony together. The breeze was cool. "Kate," he called my name softly. "Yes?" "I don't know what you're afraid of, but I want to be clear about one thing." I turned to him. "I don't want to be a replacement for anyone. I just want to be me, standing next to you. If you'll let me." I was silent for a long time. "I'm not sure if I can trust a man again," I said. He nodded. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm just asking for a chance to prove myself." I looked at him, and this time, I didn't look away. "Give me time," he smiled. "I have plenty of it." Another afternoon, I was at work when I got a call from the prison. Liam wanted to see me. I thought about it for a long time, then agreed. In the visiting room, Liam was thinner, his hair already flecked with gray. "Kate." He looked at me, his eyes red. "What is it?" "I heard Dad was in the hospital." I was worried. I nodded. "He's fine now." He was silent, then said, "You have someone new, don't you?" I didn't deny it. "Yes." He gave a sad smile. "You deserve to be happier than I could ever make you." I looked at him. "Did you call me here just to say that?" He shook his head. I wanted to say, I regret everything. I sighed. Do you regret losing me or regret losing everything? He lowered his head. Both. I stood up. Take care of yourself. Live a better life when you get out. He looked at me. Are you still angry with me? I shook my head. No, but I don't have any feelings for you anymore either. Leaving the prison, I felt lighter. No more resentment, no more baggage. That night, I texted Daniel. I just saw my ex-husband. He replied, Are you okay? I'm okay. Good. I realized Daniel wasn't jealous or overly curious. He was letting me walk through the remaining parts of my past on my own. One weekend, I brought Daniel home to meet my parents. My mom smiled warmly. You must be Daniel. Yes, ma'am. Hello. My mom gave me a knowing look. The dinner was warm. My dad talked to Daniel about business. Daniel answered respectfully, without bragging. On the way home, he said, Your parents are lovely. I smiled. Yes, they are. Are you scared? He asked softly. Scared of what? Of starting over. I looked at the road. A little, but if you don't start, you'll never know. He gently took my hand. I didn't pull away. I knew I wasn't in love with Daniel yet, but I also knew I was learning to trust again. After the dinner with my parents, Daniel didn't text more frequently or act more familiar. He remained the same, calm, keeping a comfortable distance. And it was that very distance that made me feel safe. I didn't feel pressured to move faster than I was ready. One Monday morning, my secretary told me my former mother-in-law was here. Kate, Liam's mother is waiting in the reception area. I paused, my heart tightening slightly. I knew she would find out about Daniel sooner or later. Please show her to my office. She walked in, her steps slower than before. I stood up. Please, have a seat. She looked at me for a long time, then asked directly, You have someone new? I didn't beat around the bush. Yes, she sighed. So soon? I sat opposite her. It's not soon. I've been alone for over a year. She was silent, her eyes no longer sharp, just sad. You've forgotten him so quickly. I shook my head. I haven't forgotten. I've just stopped putting my life on hold for him. She bit her lip. Have you thought about how I feel? He's in prison, and you're moving on. I took a deep breath. For decades, I lived for others. Just this once, can you let me live for myself? She lowered her head. Then she said very softly, I won't hold you back anymore. I was choked with emotion. But you're sad. She looked up. I'm sad because I know that from now on, you're truly no longer part of our family. I took her hand. I'll always see you as my mother. She pulled her hand away and stood up. Live well, Catherine. She left without anger, but her back was stooped and frail. That night, I sat alone for a long time. I didn't text Daniel. I was afraid that if I said one weak thing, I would fall back into the role of the dutiful, suffering daughter-in-law. My mom called. What's wrong, honey? You sound tired. I'm okay. She paused. Don't let other people's words pull you back into the past. I closed my eyes. I know. 2 days later, Daniel took me for a walk by the river. The evening was cool, the lights golden. He asked, Is something bothering you? I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. Do you feel guilty? He asked. I nodded. Yes, but you did nothing wrong, he said. I looked at him. Doesn't this bother you? What? That I'm still tangled up in my past. He smiled. Who isn't? I suddenly felt a weight lift. A week later, my former mother-in-law called again. Kate, are you free this weekend? Yes. I'd like you to come over for dinner. There will be one other person. I knew who she meant. Yes, I'll come. At dinner that day, there was a middle-aged woman with a kind face. This is Miss Hanson, my friend. She smiled at me. You must be Catherine. I've heard so much about you. I managed a weak smile. My former mother-in-law said, Her daughter, Heather, is a teacher. I thought. I stood up. I'm sorry, I have to go. She looked alarmed. Kate, I looked at her. I'm not angry, but I will not sit here and watch you find my replacement for your son. Miss Hanson looked embarrassed. I apologize. I bowed my head and left. On the drive home, I cried. Not out of jealousy, but because I realized that to my former mother-in-law, I was still just an empty space that needed to be filled. I called Daniel. Daniel. Yes, I'm here. I'm tired. Can you come over? I was silent for 2 seconds. Yes. Daniel came and didn't say much. He just sat next to me on the sofa. You don't have to be strong all the time. I burst into tears. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to be weak. Aren't you afraid of taking on someone with so much baggage? He looked at me. I'm afraid. But I still want to. I rested my head on his shoulder. A month later, my former mother-in-law called again. Kate, I'm sorry about the other day. I sighed. I'm not angry. You have someone new now. I won't interfere anymore. I was speechless. But I'll still miss you. I closed my eyes. I'll miss you too. That night, I told Daniel, I think I'm ready to try. He smiled, a gentle, warm smile. I'm not going anywhere. I knew I wasn't completely free of fear. But I also knew I didn't want to live the rest of my life alone because of old wounds. I told Daniel I was ready to try on a perfectly ordinary evening. There were no flowers, no wine, no romantic lighting, just the two of us sitting opposite each other in my small kitchen, in front of 2 cups of lukewarm tea. But when the words left my mouth, I knew I had just crossed a very important line. Daniel didn't hug me or make any grand pronouncements. He just looked at me for a long time and nodded. I won't make you regret this. I smiled sadly. Don't make promises. I'm afraid of promises. He nodded. Then I won't promise. I'll just do. We started a very slow relationship. We didn't make it public, didn't move in together, didn't label ourselves as a couple to our friends. It was just Daniel coming over for dinner most nights. On weekends, we would go grocery shopping, cook, and watch movies. He fixed the burnt-out light bulbs in my apartment. I made him a cup of coffee every morning he stayed over. I didn't feel my heart race. There was no dizzying passion, but I felt peaceful, the kind of peace I had forgotten existed. One evening, as I was washing dishes, Daniel stood behind me and reached for a towel. What are you most afraid of now? I thought for a moment. Afraid of trusting the wrong person again. He nodded. Me too. What are you afraid of? Afraid you'll never trust me enough. I turned to look at him. Can you handle it? If I always keep a part of the door closed. He smiled. Keep it closed. When you feel safe, you can open it. I won't break it down. Those words almost made me cry. A month later, I took Daniel home to meet my parents for the second time. My mom no longer scrutinized him like the first time. My dad offered him a drink, and they talked about business. Daniel wasn't boastful or flattering. He just spoke honestly about his journey. After dinner, my mom pulled me into the kitchen. This one's a keeper. I laughed. You've only met him twice. That's enough, she said. I can tell by the way he looks at you. I was silent. I saw it too, but I didn't dare to believe it yet. At the office, the news that I was seeing someone spread quickly. Some were happy for me, others gossiped. A woman as capable as Kate doesn't need a man. Getting involved with another one? She'd better watch out. I paid them no mind. I didn't need anyone to understand. I just needed to not lie to myself. One afternoon, I received a call from the prison. Liam wanted to see me again. I hesitated for a long time but still went. In the visiting room, Liam was even thinner, his face gaunt. Kate, you're with someone new, aren't you? I nodded. Yes. He gave a sad smile. I heard from my mom. I was silent. I'm happy for you? I mean it. I looked at him. Did you call me here just to say that? He shook his head. I wanted to say, I don't blame you anymore. I let out a soft breath. Good. Do you hate me? I thought for a moment. No, but I don't feel anything for you anymore either. He closed his eyes. That's enough. Before being led away, he said, Don't be afraid of men because of me. Not everyone is like me. I nodded. Leaving the prison, I texted Daniel. I just saw Liam. He replied immediately. Are you okay? I'm okay. Let me come pick you up. I agreed. When Daniel arrived, I could see the worry in his eyes. He didn't ask many questions, just took my hand. Did the past come back to hurt you? I shook my head. No. I just feel like I've closed another chapter. He squeezed my hand. That's good. Another evening, my former mother-in-law called. "Kate, are you free? I'd like to see you." I was a bit surprised, but agreed. We met at a small coffee shop. "I heard you have someone new." I nodded. "Yes." She looked at me for a long time. "I'm happy for you." I was stunned. "I used to think you were betraying him while he was in prison," she said, "but now I think differently." I said nothing. "You have no obligation to wait for him." It was me who was being selfish. I choked up. "Mom," she took my hand. "Go live happily. Don't worry about me anymore," I cried. For the first time, I felt truly free from the role of the daughter-in-law I had carried for so many years. 3 months later, Daniel asked me a very direct question. "Have you thought about getting married again?" I froze. "Not right now," he continued, "but in the future." I was silent for a long time. "I'm scared. I know you're scared of a repeat." "I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm just asking if you still believe in marriage." I thought of Liam, of the years I had believed, of the broken pieces. Then I said, "I don't believe in it like I used to, but I don't deny it either." He smiled. "That's enough for me." That night, I lay next to Daniel, unable to sleep. I knew I had come a long way from the woman who was almost kicked out of a boardroom years ago. I wasn't ready to be a wife again, but I was no longer locking the door to my heart. The wedding was small, with just close family and friends. My former mother-in-law didn't come, but she sent a small wreath of white flowers with a card, "Wishing you happiness." I held the card and cried. Walking down the aisle, I didn't think of Liam. Not because I had forgotten him completely, but because the memory of him no longer had power over me. On our wedding night, I asked Daniel, "Aren't you scared?" "Scared of what?" "Scared I might leave you." He smiled. "I'm scared every day, but I still choose to stay." I rested my head on his shoulder. A year later, I was pregnant, I told Daniel. He froze, then burst into tears. "I thought you didn't want more children." I shook my head. "I didn't want to have children with the wrong person." My mother cried with joy. My new mother-in-law called, telling me to take care of myself. My old mother-in-law sent a text, "Wishing you a healthy pregnancy and a safe delivery." I read that message for a long time. One afternoon, I received a letter from prison. Liam wrote, "Kate, I heard you're going to be a mother. I'm happy for you. I'm sorry I wasn't good enough to walk that part of the road with you. I am learning to be a better person. I wish you happiness." I folded the letter. No tears, no anger, just peace. The day our son was born, Daniel held my hand for 6 hours in the delivery room. "Don't be scared. I'm here." Our son came into the world, crying loudly. Daniel cried with him. "He looks just like you." I smiled weakly. Thank goodness. A year after that, I was sitting in my office, watching my son play with Legos on the floor. Daniel was reading the paper nearby. I suddenly remembered that board meeting years ago when Liam asked if I had any internal shares, and I said, just 51%. If I hadn't held on to that 51% of the company, I would have lost everything. But if I hadn't lost Liam all those years ago, I never would have met Daniel. Life is strange like that. Some losses are gateways to a different life. I no longer resent anyone. I am only grateful. Grateful to the me of the past who chose not to stay silent. Grateful to the me of today who dared to trust one more time. Before I close this story, I want to tell you something very real. I am not telling this to boast about a comeback, nor to romanticize pain or turn betrayal into something poetic. I am telling this story with one simple hope. If there is a woman, a man, or anyone out there who is being backed into a corner like I was, perhaps this story can give them a little more courage not to give up. Life isn't fair. Marriage isn't always a safe harbor. People can betray you when you trust them the most. But the most important thing is not how hard you were knocked down, but whether you get back up. And whether you get up with your back straight or your head bowed, I learned a huge lesson. Never put your entire life in someone else's hands. Not a husband, a wife, a lover, anyone. Keep a part of yourself that is independent financially, professionally, and in your self-respect. Not to be suspicious, but so that if one day everything collapses, you still have ground to stand on. The second lesson, Do not stay silent in the face of injustice just because you are afraid of losing someone, losing a home, or losing face. I used to endure, to lie to myself that it was better to let things go, that it was part of being a wife. And it was that silence that fed the greed and betrayal of others. Speaking the truth can be painful. It can mean loss, but not speaking it means losing yourself. The third lesson: the past is not a life sentence. You have the right to start over, to love again, to trust again in a slower, wiser, and kinder way to yourself. Don't let one wrong person make you close your heart for a lifetime. Life doesn't owe us a happy ending, but we owe ourselves a life lived without bowing our heads. Thank you for listening to the very end. I believe that when we tell our stories with honesty, we are quietly saving more people than we could ever imagine.